The Galactic Council chamber was filled with voices. Dozens of alien species sat in their high-backed chairs, speaking in deep, rumbling tones or sharp, clicking languages. The Great Hall, built to house the most powerful rulers of the galaxy, was buzzing with one topic: humanity. A large reptilian creature named High Chancellor Xalvek stood at the center. His emerald scales shimmered under the artificial lights as he addressed the gathered leaders. "These humans think they are equals to us," Xalvek growled. His voice was filled with arrogance. "They refuse to bow, refuse to obey. It is time we remind them of their place." Laughter rippled through the chamber. The idea of tiny, fragile humans standing against the Galactic Council was ridiculous. The Council had ruled the stars for thousands of years. They had crushed civilizations far stronger than Earth. A single voice cut through the noise. It belonged to Admiral Varlo, an old battle-scarred veteran from the Krell Dominion. His insect-like body twitched as he stepped forward. His 4 glowing eyes scanned the room before he spoke. "You are making a mistake," Varlo said, his voice calm but firm. "Humanity is not what you think. I have fought many wars, and I have never seen a species like them." Xalvek scoffed. "They are weak. Their bodies are soft. Their lifespans are short. What can they possibly do?" Varlo's mandibles clicked in frustration. "You see only their weakness, but I have seen their true strength. They do not surrender. They do not break. And if you push them too far, they will bring war to our doorstep." More laughter erupted. A blue-skinned diplomat from the Zevran Empire waved a hand dismissively. "Please, Admiral. They have a few warships, a few colonies. The Council has fleets that blot out the stars. What can one tiny race do against us?" Varlo clenched his fists. He had seen the reports. He had heard the stories. Human soldiers who fought even when outnumbered 10 to 1. Human engineers who built ships faster, stronger, smarter than any other race had imagined. He had seen a single human destroyer take out an entire Krell battleship squadron, using tactics no machine could predict. And the worst part, humans were getting stronger. "If you move against them," Varlo warned, "you will regret it." Xalvek narrowed his yellow eyes. "Are you suggesting we fear them?" "I am suggesting," Varlo said, stepping closer, "that if we attack them, we should be ready for what comes next." For a brief moment, there was silence in the chamber. Some of the younger diplomats exchanged uneasy glances. Then Xalvek smirked. "We shall see. The Council has already voted. The decision is made." Varlo exhaled slowly. They wouldn't listen. He gave the gathered leaders one last look before turning on his heel. As he walked out of the chamber, he muttered to himself, "They have no idea what's coming." The SS Valkyrie floated in the cold darkness of deep space, hidden within the shadow of a dying star. It was a warship unlike any the galaxy had seen before, sleek, silent, and armed with the deadliest weapons ever built by human hands. Captain Elias Kane stood on the bridge, arms crossed, his sharp eyes fixed on the holo display in front of him. The intercepted transmission from the Galactic Council played once more. "They refuse to bow, refuse to obey. It is time we remind them of their place." Kane's jaw tightened. The Council thought they could just erase humanity with a simple decree. They had no idea what they were about to awaken. A soft beep from the communications panel broke the silence. Lieutenant Mira Vasquez, his second-in-command, turned to him. "Sir," she said, her voice steady, "we've confirmed it. The Council has deployed a battle fleet to the Sol system. They're making their move." Kane exhaled slowly. "So it begins. They're bringing the fight to us," he muttered. "Big mistake." Mira nodded. "Intel reports say it's a full war armada. At least 3 dreadnoughts, 10 battleships, and 200 smaller support vessels. The largest fleet ever assembled by the Council." A low whistle came from the weapons officer, Lieutenant Grayson. "That's enough firepower to level Earth 100 times over." Kane clenched his fists. "And they think we'll just roll over and die." Worse, Mira said, her voice tinged with anger. They think we won't even fight back. Silence hung over the bridge. Kane turned to his crew, his voice steady, but filled with cold resolve. This is what we were built for, he said. The Council believes they're about to wipe us out, but we're not going to wait for them to come knocking. A grim smile played on Mira's lips. We strike first. Kane nodded. We have one shot at this. If we fail, Earth burns. If we succeed, he let the thought hang in the air. Then the entire Council will learn what happens when you threaten humanity. He turned back to the display, watching the massive enemy fleet closing in on the Sol system. Then, in a voice cold as the void, he gave the order. Prepare the Valkyrie for war. The SS Valkyrie drifted silently in the vast expanse of space, cloaked in the absolute darkness of the void. No transmissions, no energy emissions, just a ghost lurking in the shadows. Captain Elias Kane sat in his command chair, his fingers steepled as he studied the holographic projection of the Galactic Council's war fleet moving toward Sol. It was a behemoth of destruction, an armada designed to erase civilizations. Mira Vasquez, his second in command, stood beside him, arms crossed. They don't even know we're here, she murmured. Kane's eyes remained locked on the screen. They will soon. The Council's fleet was massive, 3 dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, carrying planet-cracking weaponry. 10 battleships flanked them, their hulls bristling with plasma cannons and railguns, while hundreds of frigates and fighters moved in perfect formation. They were arrogant in their power, confident that no one would dare stand against them. But that was their mistake. Kane's voice was steady as he spoke. Weapons status. Lieutenant Grayson, the weapons officer, tapped on his console. All systems green. Singularity warheads primed. Railguns loaded. EMP disruptors charged. We're ready, Captain. A low hum vibrated through the hull. The Valkyrie's experimental weapons systems were unlike anything the Council had ever faced. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries, pushed into the shadows, forced to build their strength in secret. Now, all that preparation was about to pay off. Mira leaned in, one ship against an entire fleet. You really think we can pull this off? Kane smirked. No, he paused. But we're going to do it anyway. The enemy fleet continued its slow advance, unaware of the predator hiding in the dark. The Council had never fought humans in a real war. They had seen skirmishes, uprisings, small battles. But a cornered humanity was something else entirely. Kane stood, his voice sharp. Helm, bring us into attack position. Stay cloaked. We move when they least expect it. The Valkyrie glided forward, unseen, unheard. A single blade against an empire. Then the order came. Fire. The first Singularity warhead launched into the void, hurtling toward the nearest battleship. It was small, barely registering on sensors, until it hit. The moment it made contact, the ship folded inward on itself, crushed by an artificial black hole. In the blink of an eye, one of the Council's greatest warships simply ceased to exist. Panic rippled through the fleet. Kane's voice was calm. Hit them again. Railguns roared. Hypersonic slugs punched through shields like wet paper, tearing into the hulls of enemy ships before they even had time to react. The Valkyrie moved like a ghost, striking from different angles, its speed making it impossible to track. The Council's fleet scrambled to respond. Fighters launched, dreadnoughts powered up their main cannons, scanning the void for their attacker. But the Valkyrie was already gone, shifting position, cloaked once more. Aboard the flagship, Supreme Admiral Kalos watched in horror. This is impossible, he whispered. One ship against all of this. His tactical officer's voice was filled with panic. Sir, we've lost 2 battleships and 3 cruisers. We still don't know where the enemy is. There. The flagship shook violently as an explosion ripped through its lower decks. Kane's voice, cold and sharp, echoed through the bridge of the Valkyrie. Let them fear the dark. The Galactic Council's fleet was no longer advancing. It was scrambling for survival. The ambush had shattered their confidence, and now fear spread like wildfire. Officers shouted over each other, systems overloaded with damage reports, and the once mighty fleet, designed to crush civilizations, found itself on the defensive. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Elias Kane watched the chaos unfold. His ship had crippled 2 battleships, annihilated several cruisers, and disappeared back into the void before the enemy could react. But he knew their luck wouldn't last forever. "They'll recover," Mira Vasquez said, her voice low. "They always do." Kane nodded. "Then we don't give them time." He turned to Grayson. "Target their command relay ships. Without them, their fleet coordination crumbles." Grayson's fingers danced over the controls. Locked in. Firing in 3, 2. The Valkyrie struck again. A volley of railgun rounds streaked through the darkness, slamming into the relay vessels, the backbone of the fleet's communication network. Explosions erupted across the void, and suddenly, the Council's ships could no longer coordinate. Their formations fractured. Orders were delayed. Confusion spread. Kane allowed himself a small smirk. "They're blind," he said. But then, the trap sprung. A colossal energy surge erupted from the heart of the enemy formation. Before Kane could react, the Valkyrie's systems flickered. The ship lurched, alarms blaring. Mira's eyes widened. They deployed a graviton web. Kane's jaw tightened. The Council had anticipated a stealth attack. This wasn't just any countermeasure. The web was a gravity-based snare designed to trap fast-moving ships like theirs. The Valkyrie's engines strained as invisible forces pulled it toward the heart of the enemy fleet. "Helm. Full reverse. Break us free." "I'm trying, Captain, but we're caught." On the enemy flagship, Supreme Admiral Kalos grinned. "There you are," he muttered. "You were clever, but now you're mine." "Charge the main cannons," he ordered, "and prepare boarding parties. If we can take that ship intact, we'll tear its secrets from the crew." Inside the Valkyrie, the crew fought to regain control. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The ship groaned under the strain. The enemy fleet was repositioning, and now they had their guns locked on a helpless target. Mira turned to Kane, her expression grim. "If we don't act now, we're dead." Kane exhaled, his mind racing. There had to be a way out. And then, an idea. A dangerous, reckless idea. "Mira, prepare the overdrive engines." She blinked. "The overdrive? Are you insane? That'll tear the ship apart." Kane met her eyes. "Better that than letting them take us." She hesitated. Then, with a nod, she turned to the console. Overdrive primed. Kane looked at the screen. The enemy fleet was closing in, confident in their victory. He grinned. "Let's show them why they should have left humanity alone." He slammed his fist onto the activation switch. The Valkyrie vanished. A sudden, blinding burst of energy erupted as the ship broke through the gravity snare, twisting space itself as it disappeared. The enemy fleet was left in shock. Kalos' smile faded. Where did they go? His officers scrambled for answers. We don't know, sir. They just vanished." Kalos' fists clenched. The predator had escaped the cage, and it was coming back. The Valkyrie drifted in the darkness of space, wounded but not defeated. The emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows over the battered bridge. The overdrive jump had saved them from the enemy's snare, but the damage was severe. Shields were down, engines barely functional, and weapons running at half power. Captain Elias Kane stood at the center of the chaos, his fingers gripping the edge of the command console. His crew worked frantically, trying to stabilize the ship, but he knew the truth. They wouldn't survive another direct encounter. "We need to move," Mira Vasquez said, sweat running down her face as she tried to reroute power. "The enemy will be tracking our jump." "They'll be cautious now," Kane replied. "We rattled them." Mira shot him a glare. And they still have an entire war fleet hunting us. A beeping from the sensor array cut through the tension. Grayson swore under his breath. "Multiple enemy ships inbound," he reported. "They found us." Kane's jaw tightened. He had one chance left, one final move that could turn the tide. He turned to his crew. "Send a distress signal." The bridge fell silent. Mira's eyes widened. To who? Kane's lips curled into a smirk. To everyone. On board the supreme flagship of the Galactic Council, Admiral Kalos received the impossible transmission. A signal, broadcasted across multiple frequencies, sent directly from the Valkyrie. A human voice, calm and unwavering, echoed across the bridge. "To all factions, independent warlords, and enemies of the Galactic Council, you've fought their tyranny. You've suffered under their rule. Now you have a chance to strike back. The Council's fleet is vulnerable. Their command structure is weak. We have already torn through their forces. Join us, and together, we will break their grip on the stars." A ripple of unease spread among the Council officers. Kalos' expression darkened. "Shut that signal down. Now." His subordinates scrambled, but the message had already spread. Every rebel faction, every hidden fleet, every enemy of the Council had just received an invitation to war. Kalos clenched his fists. They just turned the entire galaxy against us. Back on the Valkyrie, Kane exhaled as he shut down the transmission. Mira looked at him, half in shock, half in admiration. "That was either the smartest move you've ever made, or the stupidest." Kane grinned. "Guess we'll find out soon." Suddenly, the long-range scanners detected movement. A massive fleet, not the Council's, but something else. Dozens, no, hundreds of ships emerging from the void. And at the head of them, a single message was broadcasted across all channels. "We heard your call, humans, and we are ready to fight." Kane's grin widened. The tide was turning. The void of space trembled. The Galactic Council's war fleet, once considered unstoppable, now faced something it had never prepared for: a united rebellion. Across the system, hundreds of ships emerged from hyperspace. Warlord factions, independent colonies, rogue admirals, and oppressed species, all answering humanity's call. The fleet was a chaotic mix of outdated vessels, scavenged warships, and pirate frigates. But together, they formed something terrifying, a force driven by vengeance. On the Valkyrie's bridge, Captain Elias Kane watched the unfolding chaos with narrowed eyes. The ship still limped from its wounds, but now they weren't alone. Mira Vasquez scanned the incoming fleet. "I can't believe it. They actually came." Grayson let out a low chuckle. "Not just them. Look." The main screen flickered, showing dozens of Council ships breaking formation. Defections. Kane's message hadn't just reached the rebels. It had spread through the Council's own ranks, igniting doubts and hidden resentment. Officers who once served under the iron rule of the Council now turned their guns against their former masters. The Council's fleet was strong, but for the first time in centuries, they were outnumbered. And humanity was leading the charge. The first strike. The battle erupted in a storm of light. Council dreadnoughts opened fire, unleashing beams of energy that tore through the ranks of the approaching rebellion. Explosions bloomed in the void as smaller ships zigzagged between the Council's firepower, hitting weak points in their formations. The Valkyrie surged forward, weapons blazing. Despite its damage, it fought like a cornered beast, dodging fire, ripping through enemy cruisers with precise, lethal shots. Kane gritted his teeth as the ship shook from impact. Status: shields holding at 32%. "We can't take another direct hit," Mira shouted. "We won't have to." Kane pointed at the screen. The rebellion was overwhelming the Council's forces. The defectors had turned the tide, attacking from within, causing chaos in the enemy's ranks. And then the final blow came. A massive Krolin warship, once enslaved by the Council, now fighting for its freedom, smashed through the enemy's flagship, tearing it apart in a blazing fireball. The chain reaction was instant. The Council's forces crumbled. Admiral Kalos, once the Council's most feared commander, watched in horror as his fleet was obliterated. He had underestimated humanity. And now it was too late. The end of the Council. As the last Council warships fell, silence filled the bridge of the Valkyrie. The impossible had happened. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was no more. Mira let out a breathless laugh. We did it. Kane, battered and exhausted, simply stared at the wreckage. This is just the beginning, he murmured. The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had shattered the chains of oppression. But what came next was unknown. The war was over. The Galactic Council, once thought unshakable, unstoppable, eternal, had fallen. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free. But freedom came with a price. The aftermath of war. The battlefield, once filled with blazing explosions and the screams of dying ships, was now eerily silent. The wreckage of the Council's mighty fleet drifted in the void, shattered beyond recognition. On the Valkyrie's bridge, Captain Elias Kane sat in his chair, eyes fixed on the scattered debris outside. Mira Vasquez broke the silence. It's over. Grayson let out a dry chuckle. Yeah, so why doesn't it feel like a victory? Because victory was only the beginning. The Galactic Council had been the iron grip that held the galaxy together. With them gone, chaos would follow. Factions that had fought side by side yesterday might turn on each other tomorrow. Old rivalries would resurface. Greedy warlords, ambitious leaders, and power-hungry opportunists would see a galaxy up for grabs. And humanity, the spark that started this revolution, would have to face what came next. A new order or a new war. The rebellion leaders gathered on a war-torn station, their ships docked side by side. Inside the meeting chamber, voices rose in argument. The Council is gone. We should each rule our own territories. One alien warlord growled. No, a former Council officer shouted. We must establish a new central government, or we'll collapse into anarchy. An insectoid general slammed a clawed fist on the table. And who will lead? Humans? You started this war. All eyes turned to Kane. For the first time, the galaxy looked to humanity, not as underdogs, not as rebels, but as the deciding force for what came next. Mira leaned in and whispered, "We didn't fight to become rulers." Kane exhaled slowly. "No, we fought for freedom." He looked at the gathered leaders. "And we won't let that freedom turn into another empire." The final decision. Humanity would not rule the galaxy. Instead, they would protect it. Kane made the decision that would define the future. The humans would act as guardians, not conquerors. They would help rebuild, keep the peace, and ensure no tyrant would ever rise again. Some rebel leaders were furious. They wanted power. But others, those who had suffered under the Council's rule, nodded in agreement. For the first time, a new alliance was formed. Not an empire, not a dictatorship, but a true galactic unity, where no species would ever be slaves again. Epilogue. A warning to the future. As the Valkyrie prepared to leave the war-torn system, a final message was sent out across the galaxy. It wasn't a declaration of victory. It was a warning. A warning to any who would try to enslave, conquer, or rule with an iron fist. Humanity had shown mercy this time. But if tyranny ever rose again, the galaxy would learn what happened when humans no longer held back.